recall the times when I attempted to join in with the other kids in the neighborhood, but it never seemed to work out. It felt as if I were a square peg trying to squeeze into a round hole. I should have recognized that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. I confided in my mother about my feelings, and she reassured me not to fret. She said this phase would eventually pass, and that one day I would meet someone who truly understood me through thick and thin. My naive, youthful heart held onto this unrealistic hope, only to be shattered repeatedly when nothing ever materialized. But then things took a turn for the worse. My parents decided to purchase a home in the most desirable area of town. It was a beautiful gated community known as Heaven's Gates. The residents were from old money, but didn't seem to mind our new money status. Our neighbor, whom we called Miss B, even welcomed us with a lovely bundt cake. While my parents seemed to take a liking to her, there was just something about her that unsettled me. As a 9-year-old, I made my way to my new bedroom, taking in the vintage paintings that adorned the staircase. Each painting depicted individuals from a bygone era, their images serving as reminders of lives once lived. I could almost feel their gazes upon me as I ascended to my room. My bedroom was spacious, featuring bay windows that overlooked a rather dreary beach, the clouds above heavy and ominous. The queen-sized canopy bed was dressed in the most beautiful lilac bedding, and I eagerly jumped onto it. I found myself staring out the window at the strangely somber view for what felt like an eternity. When I finally awoke, night had already settled in. My body was tense and I was covered in goosebumps, as if I had just experienced a mild electric shock. It didn't take long for me to realize why. A shadowy figure loomed over me. It twisted and swayed as it hovered above, reminiscent of a tranquil lake suddenly disturbed. I couldn't comprehend what I was witnessing. The creature's form was silhouetted against the pitch-black darkness of my room, a kind of darkness that older me might describe as Vanta Black. Before my eyes, it began to dissolve into the shadows, and soon it vanished completely. That's when I came to the unfortunate realization that I had wet the bed. My parents were completely taken aback, to put it mildly. They didn't press the matter further, and I kept quiet about the shadowy figure I had spotted in my room. However, from that moment on, that eerie presence was always lurking nearby. Occasionally, I would catch a glimpse of it out of the corner of my eye, but as soon as I turned to look directly at it, it vanished. During my high school years, it even trapped me in my room when I tried to hang out with my friends. It felt like this annoying entity wanted me all to itself, doing everything it could to prevent me from forming any connections. What was its intention? Why was it trailing me? And most importantly, what exactly was it? And how could I rid myself of it? Now that I was in college, I decided to head home for Easter. As I drove towards Heaven's Gates, I noticed the shadow creature slowly creeping into the back seat. I slammed on the brakes, my head colliding with the steering wheel, and a weak cry escaped me. The airbag deployed, and I felt the cartilage in my nose crack. Warm blood trickled down my face and into my mouth, leaving a metallic taste reminiscent of old coins. I sat there racked with pain as confusion, shock, and anger swirled within me. This cursed creature had already made my life intolerable, filling me with anxiety and fear. Now it seemed intent on ending me. My hands trembled as I pushed the airbag aside and gripped the steering wheel tightly, my chest rising and falling as I struggled to keep my cool. I refused to let that monster defeat me. I would not allow that monster to break me. I would not let that monster break me. What do you want, damn it? Ever since I moved to Heaven's Gates, all you've done is try to make my life more miserable. I'm so fed up with you, I shouted, pounding my fist on the steering wheel. The creature emitted a strange noise, akin to glass being ground down, before it disintegrated in an instant. Frustrated and drained, I pressed on toward home. The first sign that something was off hit me when I noticed the gates standing wide open. They were never left that way, and there was always a list of approved visitors. The place even had its own delivery service to keep outsiders at bay. Yet I brushed it off and drove up my family's driveway. As I turned the bronze doorknob and stepped inside, a chill ran through me at the sight before me. The creature lay on the floor, writhing and pulsing as if it were dying. "I tried to warn you," it struggled to say, its voice strained as if human speech was foreign to it. "I tried to protect you. I am a failure. I failed." A cold sweat trickled down my forehead. "What do you mean? Warn me from what?" I whispered, terrified that whatever had harmed this formidable being was still lurking nearby. It uttered a word that no human could ever pronounce, but its meaning was unmistakable. Just hearing it sent a shiver through me, as if I had encountered something so forbidden, so grotesque, that my very essence recoiled without understanding why. "They took control of your friends from high school. That's why I stopped you from going those times." I stumbled back, pleading with my legs not to give way in this horrifying moment. As I stood there, a large, anxious ripple coursed through the creature. "They're here. Find my people. Tell them. Tell them." It spoke another unpronounceable word, yet this one brought an unexpected sense of calm, filling my soul like a thirsty traveler discovering an oasis. "Failed? They will protect you. You are our last chance." It quivered one final time before whispering, "Run." At that moment, Miss B descended the stairs. Her skin looked dry, cracked and ashy, with her eyes sunken deep into her skull. Behind her trailed other residents of Heaven's Gates, all appearing in a similar state to Miss B. My once friendly neighbor smiled at me. "Won't you join us, dearie? We've been waiting for you," she sang sweetly, trying to sound inviting. But I wasn't about to fall for that trick. I could make out the shimmering shadows that tugged at their strings. The energy they radiated was a mix of unsettling emotions. When I spotted my parents' lifeless forms draped over the landing banister, I instinctively took a step back. Tears threatened to spill from my eyes, and my legs felt weak beneath me. It was hard to accept that they were truly gone, just like that. Couldn't be. It just. "Go!" the shadow creature screeched. "Run! I'll give you a moment." As I turned to flee, I witnessed the creature transform into menacing spikes, impaling a few of the. I gagged at the thought. I dashed down the beach toward the ocean, somehow knowing where to find the shadow creature's kin. That shadow had been my guardian all along, and I had taken its protection for granted. It dawned on me that I had feared the wrong entity all this time. If only I had noticed the unmistakable signs, like the faint odor of decay that even the trendiest perfumes couldn't mask. Perhaps I could have done something. Anything to save my parents. The air was filled with eerie, furious shrieks. The inhabitants had slain my protector, and now they sought my life. I refused to let that happen. I wouldn't allow my protector's sacrifice to be in vain. I knew I had to assist the shadow creature's kin in finding a way to stop those loathsome beings. I threw myself into the churning waves, feeling a sense of security as they carried me further from the shore and deep beneath the surface. As I descended into the depths of the azure waters, I saw a mass of shadow creatures pulsating rhythmically. They beckoned to me in their unique language, and I felt nothing but tranquility as their dark forms enveloped me. "You must be joking," Harry's wife yelled. There was a rush of footsteps followed by a quieter shout from upstairs. "I need you to fix the washing machine again." Harry groaned, throwing a pillow over his head to block out the morning demands. It was only 6 in the morning. Who wakes up and starts complaining about broken appliances at such an early hour? His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He lazily reached out from under the pillow, frantically searching for the button to decline the call. It buzzed once more. "Come on," Harry muttered. He rubbed his hand across his face, trying to persuade his eyes to open. They reluctantly complied. The bright light reminded him exactly why they were shut tight. He pulled his colorful comforter over his head. The phone rang again. Harry silently lamented. Despite what others might think, he truly cherished his sleep. He rolled over, not needing to move far before landing on the floor. His wife usually took up most of the bed space. Just remember never to bring it up with her. or her tendency for nighttime flatulence. They weren't quiet, but definitely lethal. The phone kept vibrating. Harry crawled out from under the messy blankets, blindly reaching for the source of the noise. His fingers found a rough rectangle. He grabbed it off the nightstand and retreated to his makeshift blanket fort before answering. "Hello, you sound terrible," said the caller. "Mike, did you really call just to tell me that?" Harry croaked, sounding even worse. "No, but now I've forgotten why I called. Why weren't you answering?" "Maybe because it's 6 in the morning," Harry snapped. "Oh right, West Coast time. I completely overlooked that," Mike chuckled. "So, it's pretty early for you?" Harry rolled his eyes, ready to explain just how early it was when his 5-year-old daughter chimed in from upstairs. "Daddy, why is Mommy's face all red?" Harry sighed, resting his head in his palm. "I just want to sleep." He set the phone down on the floor and pushed it away from his blanket fortress. He considered whether it was worth retrieving. Something crashed downstairs, so probably. He crawled out but didn't bother picking up his phone. He might have to wake up, but Mike's chatter could wait until after he had some coffee. Harry gradually got to his feet, his boxers awkwardly shifting in all the wrong spots. He bent down to grab Mike, but something darted by in his peripheral vision. Startled, he jumped, but his lack of grace sent him crashing onto his backside with the phone trapped underneath him. The sound of Mike's voice coming through the speaker was a jumbled mess. A shadow moved, prompting Harry to squint at it. A small figure emerged, completely enveloped in a flowing black cloak. As the figure lifted its head, 2 bright emerald eyes sparkled back at him, while the rest remained concealed beneath the dark fabric. "I'll have to call you back," Harry muttered into his lap. His voice must have reached the phone because Mike began to speak louder, this time sounding frustrated. Harry shifted and ended the call. He stood up, making sure to move slowly. The figure's eyes tracked his face, eventually locking onto his own. The figure was so small, they looked no older than 4 years. Harry took a cautious step forward, his heart racing so loudly that he could barely hear himself speak. "Hello," he whispered. Frowning, he glanced around for an open window, but everyone was securely shut. "How did you get in here?" The child's gaze drifted to the wall facing the street. Harry frowned again. "You came from the street?" The child simply lifted their eyes to meet his. A jolt of electricity surged through Harry's mind as words tumbled chaotically within him. "You can't hide. Surrender. Nightmares never truly disappear." In a panic, Harry clamped his hands over his ears and sank to his knees. The voices only grew louder. "We don't fade so quiet. Come join us." He squeezed his eyes shut. The words felt more like a siren's wail than actual sounds. "Come. Now. Don't we all?" He curled into a ball and whimpered, the noise reaching a deafening peak that made his heart feel like it had stopped. Then silence. Harry remained still, taking a shaky breath. Something scratchy brushed against his shoulder, and he desperately wished to open his eyes. They only fluttered open when the irritating sensation grazed his skin once more. The child observed him intently. The fabric on her face had slipped slightly, revealing perfectly arched eyebrows that were furrowed together. But there was no confusion in her expression, only pity. The child drifted away, the hem of her cloak brushing against his shoulder one last time. She stood by the window, bathed in the golden light of the morning sun. There were no shadows cast around her. Her feet seemed weightless, leaving no mark on the carpet beneath her. She glanced back at Harry before vanishing completely. Her cloak fluttered down to the floor, unanchored and free. It gradually shrank, folding in on itself until it became a small rectangle. Harry stared at it, his body frozen in place. "Daddy, does Mommy's face look like a tomato?" His daughter chimed playfully. Harry moved closer to the rectangle, faces beginning to materialize as he approached. He halted, hovering above it. It was a photograph, one of his most treasured memories. His wife smiled up at him, her hair a wild halo framing her face. She radiated warmth, likely due to a child's head peeking out from that very hair. His daughter shone with joy, her cheeks smeared with melted chocolate she had tried to sneak. She attempted to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable against her soft skin. A small smile crept onto his lips as he noticed how much his daughter's curly hair mirrored her mother's fluffy mane. Harry stood still for a moment, leaving the photo, undisturbed on the ground. He hurried to the stairs, bounding up them two at a time as he set off to repair the washing machine and fix his wife's face. Upon reaching the bottom, he nearly collided with his daughter. She stood there, arms crossed over her little chest, her foot tapping rhythmically against the carpet. "What's the matter, Clarissa?" Harry asked, scooping her up into his arms. She giggled, burying her face into his chest. "Mommy's face is all red," she said, illustrating her point by tracing an outline around Harry's entire head. "Well, let's see if I can remedy that," he replied with a grin. He strolled toward the laundry room, only setting her down when he spotted his wife. Clarissa landed lightly on her feet, her long curls brushing against his legs. "Where have you been?" "I told you the washer was broken half an hour ago," his wife insisted. "Has it really been that long?" "I would have thought it was just a minute," Harry responded. "Good thing you're not in charge of guessing, Daddy." Clarissa laughed, her large hazel eyes sparkling at him. He smiled and placed his hand gently on his wife's back, guiding her toward the washer. He paused, sensing her stare. She examined him closely, trying to determine if he was trustworthy enough not to cause any damage. He leaned in and planted a gentle kiss on her cheek, tucking her unruly hair behind her ear. "I'll be finished in just a few minutes, then you can do all the laundry you want," Harry murmured. Though his wife maintained a sulky expression as she turned away, he caught sight of a beautiful smile spreading across her face. She confidently strode back into the living room, ushering their daughter along with her. Laughter bounced off the walls as Harry began to poke and prod at the malfunctioning machine. He maneuvered to the rear of the washer, checking the connections when suddenly, a scream shattered his concentration. Stunned, he froze as another scream echoed from the other room. He quickly pulled himself out from behind the washer, but his boxers snagged on a jagged piece of metal, yanking him back. He struggled with the fabric, desperate to free himself, to rush to his family, to protect them. His grip faltered, causing blood to trickle from his fingers. He kept tugging and twisting, but it only tightened its grip on him. The screams abruptly ceased. Finally, the metal tore through the fabric, liberating him. He sprinted toward where his wife and child were playing. They lay motionless like specters. His daughter was nestled in his wife's embrace, dark stains marking where their clothes met skin. Their hair spread around them like halos, two angels. A small rectangle rested on his wife's shoulder. His legs moved instinctively, positioning him over the tiny picture. It was a snapshot of a girl and her mother, both wearing bright smiles, and wild hair that could illuminate the night sky. Voices began to swirl in his mind again. Not all nightmares disappear, endlessly, never escape. They intensified, a tidal wave crashing within him. "Join us. I'll be waiting for you, Daddy." Her face is red. He crumpled to the ground, clutching his wife and child who turned to dust in his grasp. "Never here. Long ago. Join us." His skin turned cold, all warmth vanishing along with his family, his heart. "Join me, Daddy. I'll wait. Join me." Chapter 1. Los Angeles. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Isabel who lived with her two sisters, Sophia and Emma, along with their mother, Amelia. One day, the three sisters and their mom made the big move from London to Los Angeles. Emma felt quite anxious about the change. Isabel noticed her sister's unease and asked, "Hey Emma, why do you look so worried?" Emma replied, "Oh, Issy, I'm just nervous about moving to Los Angeles. Everything will be different. New school, new friends, new malls. You know what? I mean, right?" Isabel nodded in understanding and turned to Sophia, asking, "What about you, Soph? Are you feeling nervous too?" Sophia, brimming with excitement, exclaimed, "No way! I'm thrilled to go to LA." Before long, they arrived in Los Angeles, and their mother, Amelia, announced, "Girls, we've made it to our new home." The girls cheered. Finally, we're here. As they gazed at their new residence, they were surprised to see an old, castle-like house known as the House of Valerie de Merille. Curious, Sophia asked, "Mom, who is Valerie de Merille?" Their mother encouraged them, saying, "Why don't you look her up? Go meet your new neighbors, make some friends, and see if they know anything about her." So Emma, Sophia, and Isabel set off to introduce themselves to the locals. Their first stop was a house called the Browns. There they encountered a friendly and upbeat lady along with her two children, a girl named Molly and a boy named James. Their father was equally cheerful and welcoming. Next, they visited another home, the Watsons. After knocking on the door, a lovely elderly couple greeted them warmly. After meeting these new friends, the girls headed back home, excited about their new adventure. Chapter 2. I Love Black. Emma, Isabel, and Sophia gathered around the dining table with their mother. Isabel dove into her meal as if she hadn't eaten in ages. She piled her plate high with vegetables, yikes, even broccoli, and munched on 5 or 6 pieces at once while everyone watched her in disbelief. Eventually, Isabel noticed their stares and quipped, "Haven't you ever seen a hungry girl before?" As bedtime approached, the girls headed to their bedroom, which featured 3 beds in different colors. Emma's side was purple, turquoise belonged to Isabel, and pink, Sophia's favorite, was for her. Isabel wrinkled her nose at the turquoise and exclaimed, "You, what a gross color. So last year." Emma gasped, "OMG, Isi, remember in the old house when you said you'd give away all your stuff just to have a turquoise bed?" Isabel shrugged, playfully saying, "So what if I said that? Black is the coolest color now." Emma and Sophia were taken aback but eventually settled down to sleep. Just as they were drifting off, Isabel began to snore, a first for her. Emma and Sophia struggled to find rest, but just when they finally did, Isabel woke up and slipped out of the room. Chapter 3. Furious Isabel. It was a bright morning and Amelia called out to the girls announcing that it was time for breakfast. Emma and Sophia hurried down, but Isabel lagged behind. Emma inquired about Isabel's whereabouts, and just then they heard her voice exclaiming, "I'm here," which startled everyone. After they all enjoyed their breakfast, their mom encouraged the girls to head outside to play. Emma pondered aloud, "Where should we go?" Sophia suggested, "Let's go hang out with Molly and James." They made their way to the Browns' house, where Mrs. Brown, a cheerful and upbeat lady, greeted them at the door. "Oh, girls, it's you! Come on in!" she exclaimed. "Molly and James are in their room. You can go play with them while I prepare some snacks." Isabel chimed in rudely. "It's called hanging out with kids our age." The girls found themselves standing in front of James and Molly's bedroom door. They knocked, and the door creaked open. As they entered, they were met with a startling sight. A white figure loomed before them, prompting Sophia to scream, "Ah!" Just then, the figure peeled off its white covering, revealing James and Molly dressed as ghosts. For a prank. Laughter erupted among the group except for Isabel, who was fuming. Chapter 4. He passed away from old age. Mrs. Brown soon arrived with delicious snacks, veggie puffs and banana smoothies. Isabel wrinkled her nose and declared, "You, I hate veggie puffs." Mrs. Brown awkwardly replied, "Oh, I'm sorry. Dear, I'll get you cheese balls instead." Everyone enjoyed the treats and sipped their smoothies. Before long, evening fell, and the girls returned home for dinner. That night, the same pattern repeated itself. Isabel sneaked out of the bedroom and ventured into the Watsons' backyard. The following day, Mr. Watson was discovered dead in his yard. The Browns and the girls' families were invited to his funeral, where sadness filled the air. Everyone except Isabel, who wore a smile. The police were determined to investigate, especially since another neighbor, Mr. Coyle, had died in his backyard just a day earlier. A grieving Mrs. Watson told the police she hadn't seen or heard anything unusual. The officers questioned all the neighbors, eventually reaching Isabel. who simply smiled and remarked, "I think he died of old age." Chapter 5. Disappeared. It was just another ordinary day when the girl's mother let out a piercing scream, "Ah!" The girls hurried downstairs and were met with a shocking sight. Isabel stood beside a lifeless body, a dagger clutched in her hand, her clothes drenched in blood. Fear gripped everyone around them. They could hardly believe that Isabel could be capable of such an act. Sophia, trembling on the stairs, stammered, Did you kill this man?" In a chilling tone, Isabel replied, "Yes, it is I who killed this man, Mr. Watson and Mr. Coyle." "Ha ha ha ha." Emma, in disbelief, questioned, "But why would you do something like this? Isabel is kind, nice, and sweet. She would never hurt anyone." With a sinister grin, Valerie, possessing Isabel's body, declared, "I am not your Isabel. I am Valerie de Merille, the rightful owner of this house, and I seek revenge on those who took my life." Amelia, desperate to stop the madness, asked, "What can we offer you to prevent more killings?" Valerie responded ominously, "There is only one way. Someone living in this house must sacrifice their life." As silence fell over the group, Emma bravely volunteered, "I will sacrifice my life." But before she could finish, Sophia interjected, "No, I will." Just then their mother interrupted, "Enough, I will sacrifice myself." Isabel smirked. Oh, so the mother chooses to give herself up, step into this black circle of death. As Isabel began to draw a dark circle, Amelia stepped inside and vanished instantly. Chapter 6. Isabel returns. Suddenly, Isabel transformed back into her true self and exclaimed, "What happened? Where's Mom?" Spotting the dagger in her hand, she screamed, "Ah!" In a panic, she hurled the dagger onto the dead body, which caused both the weapon and the corpse to disappear. Isabel rushed toward her sobbing sisters, Emma and Sophia, who recounted the harrowing events, leading Isabel to break down in tears. Later that day, the girls visited the Browns' home to share their ordeal, which they later reported to the police, resulting in the sealing of the house. Unfortunately, the girls were sent to live with their cruel aunt, but that's a tale for another time. I'm eagerly waiting for Mommy to return home. Hurry up, I can't wait to hear the news. Right now I'm sitting on the floor next to the staircase with my knees pulled up, peering out the door. It's really warm in here. How much longer will she... I sneak a look at the clock in the other room through the open window. Has it really been an hour already? She must be on her way back from the hospital any minute. I dash upstairs to the bedroom and check myself in the mirror. Hair neat? Check. Shirt tucked in? Check. Shoelaces tied? I glance down. Oh no, I can't tie them. I need to look absolutely perfect for Mommy. I think I'll just take them off. Screech, honk, they're back. I can hear Dad's car horn. I hurry down the stairs and nearly slip on the last step. I have to be careful. After all, I'm delicate. I bounce. In front of the door, filled with excitement. Come on, Daddy. Unlock the door quickly. I can hear the key sliding into the lock. Click. Daddy opens the door for Mommy and she smiles at me, of course. Who else would she smile at? I beam back at her. Be careful, sweetie, Daddy tells Mommy. Yes, Mommy, be careful. An idea pops into my head. I sprint to the bedroom, grab a pillow from the closet, and place it neatly in the center of the bed. The blanket is already set. Daddy, bring her in now, I call out. Mommy slowly makes her way up the stairs, one hand resting on her belly, which is as big as a Halloween pumpkin. She needs plenty of rest and healthy food. That's what Dad says, and I'll make sure she gets it. Daddy helps her onto the bed. Take care, darling. He kisses her on the cheek and leaves. I don't like this part. He always leaves her alone all day long. Once I overheard Mommy chatting with the neighbor lady. She mentioned that Daddy goes to work every day. It's important, but he seems to be having some issues with his boss or something. I didn't catch everything they said. All I know is that Daddy can be scary. Does he even love me? I'm really upset with him. He hurt Mommy yesterday. He pushed her, and she fell. She was crying. Daddy didn't come home all night. I snuggled up with Mommy under the blanket, kissed her, and sang the lullaby she sometimes sings to me. After a little while, both of us drifted off to sleep. Fortunately, Daddy is in a cheerful mood today. He took Mommy to the doctor, who informed us that she will be having the baby in 4 months. I can hardly contain my excitement. The heat seems to be increasing each day. I feel a bit trapped and stifled, so I'm heading out to the balcony with Mommy to enjoy some fresh air. She's singing a lovely tune that I really enjoy. It makes me want to jump around and play. What a joyful song. I'll definitely tell her how much I like it. Rita, Daddy's calling for Mommy from the bedroom. I respond for her. Coming, Daddy. We were just gazing at the stars. I climb onto the bed between Daddy and Mommy and shut my eyes. I didn't realize how exhausted I was. I start imagining playing in the garden with Mommy. There are ducks and frogs jumping in the pond. My eyelids are getting heavy. I'm drifting off to sleep. Last night I had a really frightening dream. I saw Mommy involved in a car accident. Someone was driving recklessly and honking loudly. I felt terrified. Mommy kept saying that the brakes, whatever those are, weren't working. I died. It hurt so much the glass pierced right through my stomach. Now I'm feeling really scared. Daddy has left town for a few days and I don't like it one bit. It feels odd. He mentioned he was going to work, but when Mommy called his office, he wasn't there. Mommy got very upset. She called Daddy on the phone and I could hear her yelling. It frightened me. I've decided I need to do my best to keep her spirits up. Mommy needs to eat more fruits. That's why I woke up early this morning before she did and picked fresh grapes from the garden vines. I placed them on her bedside table. Mommy was quite surprised to see them. She ate them anyway, and it made her happy. I love it when she smiles, pats me, and chats with me. I told Mommy I want pizza. She's ordering it from a place called a restaurant. Daddy still hasn't returned. It's been 5 days since he left for work. Today, I had that same dream again. After watching TV with Mommy, I fell asleep. I found myself back in that car with loud noises all around. This time, Daddy was in the dream too. He was cutting wires from a strange machine. I don't want to think about it. It was terrifying. Wow, it's sweltering out here. Mommy still has a week to go before she gives birth, and I can hardly contain my excitement. But that's not the main thing on my mind right now. What's really bothering me are these odd sounds I've been hearing lately. I wonder if something's wrong with my ear, and the heat is unbearable. The voices seem to get louder by the second, making it hard for me to hear Mommy. I'll definitely ask the doctor to check my ear. Today is super busy. Mommy is heading to the hospital to have the baby. She seems to be in pain, but I reassure her that everything will be all right. Of course, I'm going along with her. I was so excited last night that I couldn't sleep at all. I've come down to the garage with Mommy. Daddy is working on something under the car. He says he's getting it ready for us. Daddy can be intimidating, but he has a gentle side too. Why is it so hot, noisy, and cramped? I feel really uneasy, but I won't let Mommy go alone with the neighbor lady. Daddy can't join us. He says he has something important to take care of. Take care, honey, he tells Mommy. Bye, Daddy. I wave goodbye. He waves back with a smile. Wait, Daddy can smile? This makes me so happy. I was worried there was something wrong with him, like he forgot how to smile. Oh no, these noises are really hurting my ears. I feel like crying. I think I dozed off in the car. Now I'm back in my bedroom at home. I believe the neighbor lady brought me here. It's starting to cool down a bit, but the noises are even louder. Where is Mommy? I can't find her. Oh right, she's at the hospital. How could I forget that? Hurry to the main door. It's freezing now. Why am I so exhausted? And my belly hurts really badly, just like in my dream. Speaking of which, I had that dream again. I'm sitting on the floor beside the staircase, knees tucked up, staring out the door. I'm once more waiting. I'm waiting. Waiting for Mommy and Daddy to return home. I'm looking forward to meeting Her soon, kissing her soon, hugging her soon, I'm waiting to be born. There are certain spots in this world where it feels perfectly reasonable to think you've crossed a time portal, places where the years seem to drift by unnoticed by the locals, while remaining small enough to escape the attention of the surrounding areas. Other locations radiate an almost ethereal vibe, with their energy being either overwhelmingly uplifting or distinctly unsettling, depending on who you ask. In recent years, I had been soaking up the vibrant experiences offered by the lively cities up north. However, as time went on, city life began to feel less satisfying, and I found myself daydreaming about the serene, charming landscapes of the South. I envisioned discovering a spot that was still connected to nature, where the essence of the natural world could flourish. Little did I know what awaited me. After hitchhiking for a while, I received rides from several kind truck drivers and a grumpy old melon farmer named Dave in his pickup truck. This helped me transition from the mountainous terrain of Virginia to the rolling hills of eastern North Carolina. The air was humid, yet refreshing, making the cool breeze that danced through my hair even more exhilarating. I had never encountered such vast fields of tobacco before, nor seen such a diverse array of vehicles from different eras cruising by, some looking as if they had just come off the showroom floor. As I glided along the winding, sun-bleached pavement of Highway 87 in the back of that pickup, I was captivated by a pair of quaint wooden structures standing in a nearby field. Clearly remnants from the last century, their history was etched into the weathered brown planks, which seemed to be perpetually teetering in a state of collapse. Surrounding them were clusters of rusted farm equipment and the decaying shell of a Model T, now merely serving as decoration in the empty field. They all stood as poignant reminders of days long gone. Dave steered the red Silverado to the roadside and shifted the truck into park with a noticeable groan. I waved away the cloud of reddish dust that hung in the air and hopped over the tailgate, landing on the ground. Looking ahead, I noticed that Dave had parked us near the edge of a charming little town. It didn't seem like much from my vantage point, but it was certainly better than nothing. I approached the driver's side window as Dave struggled to roll it down, cranking it with effort until he finally poked his head out, almost dislodging his well-worn camouflage cap in the process. His bright sky blue eyes sparkled with mischief, complemented by his wide, toothy smile. "Well, I guess this is where we say goodbye, amigo. I need to grab some new seeds for the old lady before she has a meltdown," Dave exclaimed, rolling his eyes dramatically. His Appalachian accent added a playful flair to his words. "Thanks again for the ride." "I really appreciate it," I replied. "Don't mention it, just be cautious out here. Some of the locals can be a bit, you know," Dave warned, twirling a finger around his temple and letting out a sharp whistle. "I'll do my best. As long as there's a hotel around, I should be just fine. The only one I know for sure is still open is the old Delilah Inn. Just keep your eyes peeled for anything unusual there, all right?" Dave advised. I was momentarily taken aback by Dave's straightforwardness and raised an eyebrow in intrigue. "What do you mean?" I inquired. "I used to be the local telephone guy back in '72 before I managed to escape this place. I was doing a simple job at the hotel, just running some lines when I stumbled upon a bunch of black cords snaking up through the walls of the rooms. I traced them back and found they were all connected to stacks of tape decks in a strange basement." He explained. "Are you serious?" I asked, astonished. It hit me like a heart attack. I never did spot any cameras, though. Once I wrapped up my work, I hurried to report it to my supervisor. He assured me he would handle it, but honestly, it didn't seem that way to me at all. That little rascal probably just swept it under the rug. Regardless, I made sure to avoid taking any assignments in that town again, and I definitely kept my wife and kids far away from there. I had no desire for some creep getting any ideas about us. I totally understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate the warning. I'll definitely stay vigilant, I replied. With that, the serious expression on Dave's face faded, and he broke into a grin once more. "Take care of yourself, kid," he said, extending his large, weathered hand to mine, giving me an unexpectedly strong shake. "You too," I responded, matching his grip before stepping back to give him room to drive off safely. The wobbly window squeaked as it rolled back up, and Dave shot me a friendly wink before focusing back on his truck. Even through the glass, I could hear him grunt as he shifted into drive. Then he spun the truck around and sped down the highway in the direction he had come from. I waved goodbye one last time before turning to head further into town. "Greetings from Delilah," the sign, riddled with bullet holes, called out to me in a fading white font. It wasn't exactly inviting. As soon as I crossed the weathered green sign marking the town limits of Delilah, a chill ran up my forearms, leaving me with goosebumps. I was tempted to call Dave back, but I pressed on. As I walked over a set of rusty train tracks, the town began to reveal itself more clearly. Despite the eerie vibe, it appeared to be just your typical small town. I could make out what I assumed was Main Street, lined with quaint brick mom-and-pop shops on either side, with a few cars parked here and there. I noticed a handful of people wandering around, drifting from one shop to another like some sort of restless spirit. They didn't seem particularly welcoming, but thankfully they weren't wielding pitchforks either. However, their gaze remained fixed on me until they moved on to the next store, which was more than a little unsettling. That's when I spotted a small Kmart at the end of the street. Surely this place can't be too terrible. What kind of wicked town has a Kmart? Oh man, I'm being compelled to commit murder by some unknown force, but my finances are really tight. I could almost hear one of the locals saying, "I better put this shotgun on layaway so I can kick off my killing spree in 8-12 weeks. Oh, and it's a blue light special too? Sweet." I chuckled at my ridiculous thought and tried to shake off my unease. Continuing my walk toward Main Street, I stepped up onto the concrete curb and followed the sidewalk while taking in my surroundings. The leftmost of the two tall rows of brick buildings featured an old Coca-Cola advertisement painted on its side. Although the colors were faded and peeling, it still managed to stand out against the muted earth tones behind it. The windows of the various shops appeared dark and stained, reminding me of sweat. Between the buildings, I caught sight of a rundown church perched on a small hill not too far away, perhaps a quarter of a mile. It seemed to be where most of the townsfolk congregated, even though it was just Tuesday. The only car that passed me during my stroll was rather unremarkable, a powder blue Oldsmobile that quietly cruised down the serene road. However, the driver was a completely different matter. The driver's face resembled something out of a horror movie, like a vampire or demon straight from a John Carpenter film. She was an older woman with a tangled mass of grayish-black hair piled messily on her head. Her features were sharp and angular, and long, jagged yellow teeth jutted out from her mouth. Those fangs appeared to have been sharpened to points, peeking out from under her closed cheeks. Her pale skin was splattered with what looked like wet red paint across her pointed chin and down the side of her neck. However, it was her cold, lifeless eyes that truly sent chills down my spine, locking onto me with a menacing glare. My heart sank as I rubbed my eyes, hoping to erase the Stoker-esque nightmare unfolding before me. When I finally dared to look, again she had transformed into just an ordinary old lady. No fangs, no blood, yet those same soulless eyes remained. I gave her a cheerful wave, but she didn't respond at all. Instead, she continued to stare at me in disgust. After a moment, she turned and walked away, and I watched her until she disappeared from view. What was happening to me? Was there some kind of aerosol in the air making me hallucinate monsters? Had David spiked his damn melons? No, that couldn't be right. I was flooded with questions, yet found myself without any answers. My mouth felt parched, as dry as the Sahara Desert. Glancing over, I spotted a small tavern that seemed to be open for business. It looked much like the other establishments along the strip, except its window boldly displayed the word tavern in large white letters. Love it or hate it, the simplicity got the message across. I quickly stepped inside, eager for a refreshing drink, only to encounter more peculiar characters. Behind the dimly lit bar stood a burly man with a significant beer belly, diligently polishing glasses. The dull overhead lights reflected off his bald head and directly into my eyes, causing me to squint. I pulled out one of the empty bar stools and settled in. Soft power ballads from the 1980s played quietly in the background. "Hey there, could I grab a bottle of Coors?" I asked. He shot me a sharp glare and frowned deeply. Maintaining his gaze, he took the glass he had been polishing and forcefully placed it under the beer tap, pulling the lever to fill it to the top with the frothy amber drink. With a low grunt, he slid the filled glass toward me before turning back to grab another glass for polishing. "Thanks," I said. "How much do I owe you?" The bartender raised 3 thick fingers and let out a higher-pitched grunt, which I took as a sign of approval after I handed him 2 $5 bills to pay for my drink and tip. That's how it goes. I took a long sip of my drink, feeling the refreshing fizz tickle my nose. I carefully set my beer down on the small napkin in front of me and glanced around at the other patrons at my table. While I didn't spot any monsters, the scene didn't exactly fill me with comfort either. An intergender scout troop sat stiffly in their seats, all dressed in neatly pressed military-style uniforms, except for one little girl adorned with badges, and a beret who was marching around them with a long ruler held tightly in her black-painted nails. It was safe to assume she was the leader of this peculiar group. All their eyes were fixed on me, watching like cats eyeing a dangling string. "Hey, barkeep, am I wearing something that annoys people around here, or is it just my face that makes folks want to punch me?" The man at the bar, whose tough demeanor softened a bit thanks to my tip, set his glass aside and leaned closer to me. "This town isn't welcoming to newcomers," he said quietly, his rough voice carrying a hint of an Eastern European accent. "If I were you, I'd be cautious, very cautious. I've noticed. Any advice for a poor soul stuck here for the night?" I asked, taking another sip of my beer. "The night?" The bartender sneered slightly before continuing. "I'd suggest getting a silver dagger, some sage, and a tub of salt. That might do the trick. Maybe toss in a few crosses for good measure. Whatever you do, don't venture out into the night. You won't like what you find." I'm not thrilled. With what I'm witnessing right now, good grief. "Is there any taxi service I can call to help me escape this town?" I inquired. "The only cab available goes from here straight to the cemetery." "No further," he answered. "Oh, how delightful. No Uber options." "Nope. We ran out of Germans after the last batch." "Vanished," he replied. "All right. What's the closest town?" I asked. "It's a solid hour west of here. Assuming you don't get hunted for sport and decapitated before you manage to leave Delilah," he warned. "Does that happen often?" "Oh, you have no idea," he said with a serious tone. "Okay then, are there any shops nearby where I could grab a silver knife or something?" I asked, trying to keep my casual demeanor despite being soaked in sweat. The bartender let out a sigh and discreetly slid me a small silver knife under a cloth napkin, as if he were dealing drugs. "Thanks," I said, carefully tucking the blade into the inner pocket of my jacket. "Finish your drink and get out of here. It'll be dark soon." You don't want to be outside when that happens. I downed the rest of my beer in one go and stood up slowly, feeling the eyes of everyone in the room tracking my every move with eerie calmness. After settling my tab, I quickly exited the bar and made a dash for the hotel just a block away. I quickened my pace, ignoring any potential watchers as I hurried along. The light was fading fast. How long had I been stuck in that bar? I thought it was just a few minutes. The hotel stood out from the other buildings like a sore thumb. Unlike the other businesses on the downtown strip, its age was unmistakable. The 3-story structure resembled more of an asylum than a hotel, and the stone gargoyles adorning its Gothic arches gave me the unsettling feeling that I was being observed by their piercing red eyes. Additionally, I noticed something crimson staining their claws. Was that paint? Please let it just be paint. I hurriedly pushed through the pair of glass doors and entered the hotel vestibule. As I navigated past various extravagant decorations, I arrived at the reception desk, where an unusual man in a striking blood red suit stood awkwardly, as if he were glued to that spot. He had a golden name tag on his lapel that read, "Tom," in an overly ornate script. His weary eyes followed me, but his focus seemed more professional than threatening. "Good evening, How. Can I assist you?" Tom inquired. It was tough to tell if he had a speech impediment or if he was simply a native French speaker. Perhaps a bit of both. I bypassed the small talk and quickly requested a room from Tom. With a dagger in hand, I briskly walked down the burgundy-carpeted hallway toward the elevators, pressing the button for the 4th floor without hesitation. I could almost hear a swarm of tiny footsteps trailing behind me, which made me tense up, anticipating an attack. However, my anxiety was temporarily eased by the gleaming silver doors that shut behind me, whisking me away to the top floor. When the doors opened again, I dashed toward room 408 and swiftly inserted the slender brass key Tom had given me into the door's handle, causing the keyring to jingle loudly. My heart raced as if it wanted to escape my chest while I struggled to unlock my room. A sudden chill swept through the air as the lights at both ends of the hallway began to extinguish one by one, creeping closer to me. I couldn't tell if it was sheer panic or something else, but I could have sworn each dying bulb was accompanied by the eerie giggle of children. Just as the last light above me started to flicker, I finally managed to get the stubborn lock open and rushed into my hotel room. I quickly slammed the door shut behind me and secured it with a tight lock. Once that was taken care of, I leaned against the white surface of the door and let my weary head hang low. After a brief pause, I lifted, my gaze to take in the brightly lit space around me. The single bedrooms were typically quite compact, but at least this one didn't seem particularly sinister or like a crime scene. Just as I started to feel a bit more at ease, the power in my room suddenly went out, plunging me into complete darkness. In that moment, I found myself surrounded by numerous pairs of unblinking, lifeless eyes that glowed eerily in the shadows. All I could do was let out a scream,